Clara, you are quite remarkable among foundation presidents in that you have chosen to put literally all of your assets not into policy wonkery, which is a little frightening to people like us, but into direct enterprises that carry out the vision of shared community capital. And I'd love to hear you tell us something about how you do this, why you do this, and what you see it aggregating to.
Sure. For those of you who don't know what the typical business model of a private foundation is, and I imagine everybody does, it's basically that one takes a large sum of money, Mrs. Glitterbosom's, donation to a private foundation, and invests it in a very traditional way from the top down. And 5% of that by IRS law is parceled out in grants, typically to wonderful causes of a variety of types, almost invariably nonprofit organizations. And long before I arrived at the Heron Foundation, which was about 2 years ago, here was a foundation that said, wait a minute, why are we locking up 100% of our capital and providing 5% a year in a small trickle? Why aren't we trying to wield all of our capital, or at least a larger percentage of our capital, for mission? So when and so it had taken that decision. Our mission is to help people and communities help themselves out of poverty. And when I arrived, we did not need McKinsey in the room to tell us that our 20-year life had seen poverty go from pretty bad to even worse. And that somehow we were investing at the time in terrific organizations doing housing development, access to financial services, a variety of things. But underlying the entire enterprise, in a sense, was the notion that poverty was somehow marginal. And that if people just had access to loans, to buy houses, to training, to education, that there was a reliable economy waiting on the other side of the proposition that would provide them the route upward. And we had to tell ourselves, this is a lie. And it's been a lie for at least 50 or 60 years. We had been depending on this lie for 20 years. And that if we were going to actually model the idea that our foundation helped people help themselves out of poverty, we had to look at employment very hard. And we had to look at how do you invest capital in enterprises that employ people. And that is now guiding our investment policy. So 100% of our assets, maybe 105 on a good year, are for mission. We're developing a new business model for a private foundation along those lines, where we feel, and we think that actually we have a fiduciary responsibility of obedience to mission, that we would wield all of our capital for mission. That we wield money as a tool for good, that we approach enterprises that use the technology of enterprise for social benefit. We want to influence the whole economy. Obviously, a $280 million foundation is a rounding error on a bad day at BlackRock on Wall Street. So we can't pretend that somehow in our small terrarium we can model a better economy. But we have defined also a financial role for our foundation, which is not typical. It's much more typical that modern portfolio theory guides most of the investing from the top down, and programmatic expertise guides, with no regard for finance at all, grant making on the other side of the house. Nobody talks to each other. We have one capital deployment department. We combined grant making and investing. Every dollar is a mission dollar. Every dollar is a dollar to achieve what we're doing. We're bottom up as well as top down, which is not typical. In other words, we say to ourselves, what are the deals that are in the economy that will lead to the kinds of effects we want to enterprises, what does enterprise need in order to produce jobs? It absolutely needs policy that is appropriate, but we also need to say, how do we measure both financial and social, broadly construed success on both sides of the coin together? So that's where we come down. Most impact by foundations, we think all investing is impact investing. All enterprise is social enterprise. There are a few antisocial enterprises out there, but most of it, the plurality, is doing something that is socially beneficial. And all investing is impact investing, whether the impact is positive or negative, whether the financial return is positive or negative. It is in fact mostly just unexamined by investors, whether they be foundations, and philanthropic investment is only about 1% of assets under management of endowed assets. Pension funds, for example, are much bigger. So all of that, is essentially the way we're going forward as a foundation.